He was an irascible person by temperament, which means he was easily angered. His friends admitted he was hard and repulsive, rough and cross. He came from a small farm in Gascony, France, and was not known to have any ambition. But he became a priest, even though his temperament did not change one bit. Who would want to receive the sacraments or give their confession to someone who not only was miserable, but who was not motivated, and most likely couldn't motivate anyone else as well? But as we are told in today's gospel, as long as the person is acting in behalf of Jesus' name, then they cannot, says Jesus, speak ill of me. What he is saying is the Spirit moves everyone in different ways, and we are not to see the person who is giving out communion or teaching church school class or even confirming us. We are to see the Spirit that is working through them. In the Old Testament reading today, even Moses rebukes Joshua when Joshua asks Moses to stop Eldad and Medad's prophesying because they missed the gathering where the Spirit was bestowed on the elders. Joshua must have thought that anyone not in the meeting was not worthy to proclaim of the Lord. Maybe some of us feel that way today, that if someone is not ordained or commissioned, they are not worthy to spread the word. Not to take anything away from those of us who are ordained or commissioned, but that is not a prerequisite to be filled with the Spirit and to speak in God's name. The irascible man from a small farm in Gascony that became a priest was ordained. So by the laying of hands, he had the right to preach. But with his temperament, those of his time most likely had a hard time listening to him or wanting him to give them the sacrament of communion. How we judge. One day, this miserable, unmotivated individual, he heard the deathbed confession of a servant. This confession was so moving to this man, it opened his eyes to the spiritual needs of the peasantry. He began to work among the imprisoned galley slaves. Soon after, he founded an order where the priests took vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, and stability. They were to devote themselves to people of small villages and towns. This man later established confraternities of charities for the spiritual and physical relief of the poor and the sick of each parish. With the help of St. Louise de Marillac came the Daughters of Charity, and they lived in the convent of the sick room, the chapel of the parish church, and their cloisters were the streets of the city. He founded hospitals, collected relief funds for the victims of war, and taught clergy how to conduct retreats. He founded the Vincentian Order of Priests and Brothers. This once mean, ill-tempered, less-than-lovable man was St. Vincent de Paul, whose anniversary, feast day, we celebrate tomorrow. It's likely that many people judge St. Vincent before his spiritual opening after he listened to that deathbed confession of the servant. Possibly, people even avoided St. Vincent or would complain to each other about a man of his personality could be a priest. It's not the vessel that matters, but what's in the vessel that counts. Any charity Vincent felt was probably in him prior to the event, but possibly he could not bring it out of himself without the help of another. The dying servant brought out the goodness of St. Vincent. How wonderful was it that not only did the Spirit work through the servant, but it worked through a person who was a servant, a person who spent their life working for others, always on call, always putting others first. Someone who did not have any standing in society. As St. Vincent's story and the readings tonight point out, it does not matter who the person is. What matters is that the Spirit is working through them to help others. As Jesus says in the Gospel, if we are working in the name of Jesus, we cannot be doing sinful things. Well, now, as witnessed this past week by millions of people, this message was once again brought to our attention by Pope Francis. He was definitely doing the work of Jesus. And like Jesus, he is an unassuming man. Yet he was given so much attention, more than any athlete, movie star, or rock star could ever get. There were tens of thousands of people standing on the roadsides to catch a glimpse of him as he moved from place to place. The people packed into whatever venue hosted him. I found it enriching that Pope Francis was treated to the best the U.S. has to give, us. He gave us his best too. He spoke of this country being one of immigrants, and that he too is an immigrant here, that we have so much, and we should never get numb to what we have, and we are always to share that with our neighbors. That we should not lose our moral consciousness, as he quoted Pope Paul some 50 years ago. He spoke not only of immigration, but of global warming and abortion, and he did it in a spiritual sense. He praised the women religious for all their sacrifices and reached out to people of all kinds. When he met with school children, he mentioned Dorothy Day and Martin Luther King, and that all children should have a dream and fight for that dream. He told the children not to let the devil distract them, as all the devil brings is sadness. He even gave them homework. He asked them all to pray for him. He always asks all he meets to pray for him. In this age of showy, self-centered, materialistic people, he is truly a humble, humble man. And he shows us by living that example.